Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Welcome, everybody, and happy 2021. Even though we're recording this, I'm just going to say it's airing on January 1st, and so it's a new era, a new day. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast of the Arts and Parks show with Nancy and Lisa. We're the crazy mother-daughter travel team on our Love Your Parks tour. We travel full-time documenting parks and public lands and also sharing the stories of their communities. And we also publish 2 digital publications, and this year is all about special publications coming out from special editions. So we've got Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, our variety publication, and Parks and Travel magazine. But we've got a whole bunch coming out, just specialty publications coming this year. So keep up with us at BigBlendMagazines.com. Sign up for our newsletter. It's the best way to get them. But listen, First Friday is really special. Every first Friday for the last few years, we've been interviewing, or at least airing recorded interviews, with artists in residence that are all part of the National Parks Arts Foundation Artist in Residency program. They do awesome stuff. They work with artists. You can be a poet, a musician, a writer, a painter, a photographer, a filmmaker, a ceramist, whatever you want to do. You can apply to be one of their artists in residence, where you get to spend an entire month in a national park unit. We're talking Hawaii Volcanoes. We're talking Chaco Canyon out in northern New Mexico, Dry Tortugas, your own private island in the Florida Keys. So this is really, really unique. I know. Check them out.
I want the island.
I know, we both do. No, yeah, but apparently off grid for a whole month. And so I go, even more.
Cool.
So there we go.
That'd be so cool.
Check out nationalparksartsfoundation.org and we get their newsletter, sign up for their social medias and everything so that you can keep up with their opportunities, because they get grants for them and these opportunities come and go fast. And if you don't get it the first time around, apply for the next time. Our today's show, we have 2 guests joining us that they've been on our show before. Both are connected to the National Parks Arts Foundation, and they're joining us to talk about the Antarctic Artists and Writers Collective. It's a new organization of past participants in the National Science Foundation Antarctic Artists and Writers Program. I really encourage you to go to the website. It is like you're gonna go down the rabbit hole of Antarctica through the arts. It is an amazing experience. Go to aawcollective.com, and I'm going to bring our first guest, Glenn-McClure. Who emailed me saying, hey, check this out. You girls, you got to put us on the show. And we're like, heck yeah, we do. Glenn is an amazing composer, musician. He was on our show when he was at the Artist in Residence with the National Parks Arts Foundation when he was in Hawaii at the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. His website is artforbrains.com, and he's also a co-founder of the group. But Glenn, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you so much. It's so great to be back.
Hey, it is good to have you back on the show, too. I want to bring also our second guest, Michelle, back on. It's been a few years. Glenn was on in January 2019, so this is like our every 2-year anniversary call with you, Glenn. It's like within days. It's awesome. Michelle was on our show way back in 2017 in spring. Michelle-Schwengel-Regala, and she is awesome. Go to her website, schwengala.com. Am I getting that right, Michelle? I'm pronouncing everything
perfect.
here.
Thank you.
Hey,
wow,
this is cool. And we're recording this while we're live in your hometown in Madison, Wisconsin.
Woohoo!
Hey, listen, cheese curds, that is a big deal here. Cheese curds and beer, apparently. Aha.
Oh, yes. And the sausage and the kraut and all the foods I love. I can get some of them out here, but the cheese curds never fresh enough. So enjoy them for me, please.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We're doing really good. We're doing really good.
We've got the excuse to go get them now.
I know. We've got to go get more. But you are you're a scientific illustrator, a fiber artist, a naturalist, and also the National Parks Arts Foundation and Invitation Artist. You called us with Tanya Ortega, the founder of NPAF, back in 2017 when you came on the show. But you are also part of this whole program, and I think this is so exciting to have you both on because you're both very different in what you do in your art, which is the thing that's really cool about this collective. Glenn, Tell us about how this whole thing started in creating this collective.
Well, Michelle and I are part of a long history of artists, of visual artists, photographers, musicians, graphic novel artists, all sorts of folks that have been part of the heritage of the arts of Antarctica. We actually can trace our artistic heritage all the way back to the age of exploration, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Yeah, every one of those great explorers, like Scott and Shackleton, made sure that they had artists on their boats to help tell the story of this place. That I know when I was getting ready to go, many people said that going to Antarctica is the closest to visiting another planet without leaving ours.
Cool.
And so right off the bat, we're proud to be part of this, more than century-long heritage. Going back to photographers like Frank Hurley, who was on the Shackleton expedition, and telling the story of Antarctica through the arts to the rest of the world. And so I was down there in the fall of 2016, and as I was down there with a couple of other artists, as part of this, the National Science Foundation Artist and Writers Grant. Okay, so one thing to note that one of the premier science organizations on the planet also values the power of what artists bring to telling the story of science and scientists, because there is this amazing fellowship that both Michelle and I have benefited from, and lots of other folks. But when I was down there in the fall of 2016, I was just kind of asking around a little bit and saying, gee, have any of the people that have gotten this grant from the National Science Foundation, have they ever gotten together and done some stuff? Have they shared their work? Have they ever kind of bound together as a group? And largely the answer to that was not really. So coming back from that, with a couple great people from that we worked with, and also past Antarctic participants, we gathered together at a place called Aunt Karen's Farm outside of Oneonta, New York. It's a wonderful artist retreat run by Karen Schaefer, who actually did some work down in Antarctica, but also has a vast heritage of working in the Manhattan arts community. And we gathered with about 13 of us to simply ask the question, gee, all of us are doing great work. Is there a reason for us to gather together? And the resounding answer to that question was yes. And so since that time, the last year and a half, we've been trying to answer the next round of questions of what does that mean. And it's been so exciting to be part of this group of artists in building a new organization. And I must admit that, especially in the time of COVID, when so much of the arts and certainly in my world in the performing arts has been shut down, I have so greatly valued this deep and inspiring conversation with 12 other artists to create the Antarctic Artists and Writers Collective.
I love this, and going to Michelle, I mean, I think there's something important with Antarctica because this whole website, because there's an online exhibitions going on, and it just immerses you in a place that for a majority of us don't get to go. Also, you're putting science in the forefront, which has been in, I don't know, just keeps getting attacked over and over, and yet we need science. I mean, it's like when you break your arm and your doctor puts your arm in a cast, that's thanks to ancient medicine, and Ayurveda, and science coming together. So I'm just saying it's important, especially now with climate change, that what you're showing through art is a way for us to connect. And I think it's a way to also interpret science. And I think, Michelle, what you've done with your work, too, is very fascinating, both of you, and everyone that have been, getting it is a rabbit hole on that website. When you go in there, you're going to, dig it and get your kids involved, too. Man, it's so cool. But, Michelle, tell us a little bit about your journey in Antarctica when you went.
Sure. I listened to our previous interview yesterday, and at the end, I realized, indeed, I mentioned that I was waiting for news on this application to go to Antarctica. And I'm so glad to report that that first round of proposal that my collaborator and I put forth was accepted. Now, our proposal was a little bit different from most in that we were proposing that we would scuba dive under the sea ice outside of the perimeter of Ross Island, where McMurdo Station is. It's the largest research station on the continent run by the U.S. And we were scuba diving at 4 different dive sites in the area, all accessed by driving on vehicles on top of the sea ice. It was during the austral summer, so the temperatures were quite moderate, but still it was quite cold. But the experience, it was exactly like what you're saying, Glenn, that the past explorations are often saying how much it's like being on another planet, and especially the underwater realm. I think that exemplifies it even further. It felt like I was on some other world in another galaxy or something. It was unlike any other diving I'd ever done before, but absolutely worth all the effort.
Oh, and we've got photos of you doing it. And one of the photos, you said this is your 33rd dive. Like, you seriously went under the water 33 times over there?
Cool. Yes, for science, absolutely.
What's wrong with you, girl? I'm just kidding.
No, I think it's cool.
I'm just kidding. I think it's awesome. Yeah,
I would totally do that. But how did you keep?
I'm glad to hear that.
No, but how did you keep warm?
I believe that my heritage in Wisconsin and the fact that I got my initial scuba certification in Wisconsin was preparing me all along for this expedition. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what it led to, and it was perfect. The gear you wear when you're in cold water, if you're ice diving or diving in colder waters, is not the neoprene that you often wear if you are in more comfortable waters. Instead, conditions like this require a dry suit, and that's considered an exposure suit where you are there's a distinct barrier where you're not coming in contact with the water itself. There are these tight seals around your neck and around your wrists, or you have this entire, it's like wearing a big garbage bag, and you have to get out some of that air so that you're not super buoyant and like a Stay Puft Marshmallow character. But it all works out. The system is very technical, but it's also very straightforward. And these were new diving skills I was so happy to acquire for this purpose.
Wow. So you don't go to the surface butt first.
Only when you want to. You have control over how buoyant your suit is. And I was wearing more weight around my waist than any other dive experience, so that was an interesting modification to have to adjust to.
It's so funny because now you're in Hawaii, and I know you've been to Tahiti. You've done other expeditions, and this is tropical. You've done the extremes, like I don't want to say bipolar, but it's bipolar, like literally the different.
Oh, you are right. My husband had a research spot in Sweden for a year before we did our first interview and before we moved to Hawaii. And so during that year, we did travel up above the Arctic Circle of Sweden. And so I can say that I am bipolar in that capacity. I would love to do more work in the Arctic to really explore that area to the depths like I did at the southern hemisphere. So that's on my list of goals for now.
Your art too, what you've done, and I remember our conversation, and I want to get to Glenn's too, because I talk about you guys on shows all the time, and Glenn, definitely I want to touch on some of the music thing, because there's some stuff that we're doing that I'm like, I want to record nature sounds because I feel like they're going away. I want to talk about that, but what was interesting in our conversation before in your art, what you do when you crochet, And what you did with the chain, like, Nancy's like, the lady with the chain is coming back on the show. And I'm like, yeah, because what you did was like, you were talking about how it's representing like what was it? All the science stuff, all the little meters going up and down with all the lights and all the, it sounds like you guys were on like a Star Trek ship. I'm just going to say that. Let's put it that way, right? Of all the science, geeky stuff going on. And so you took what the scientists were doing and making, like you were like recording, you both were doing sound waves in an interesting way. It's cool to have you both on like this, talking about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when Glenn and I met in New York in 2019, indeed, we initially felt a connection where there were ways that we could share each other's inspirations and subject matter. And I feel like there's still a collaboration in the works between us, Glenn, whether it be in Hawaii or some other part of the world. I'm not concerned about that detail. I'm just looking forward to when we can make that plan.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that that notion of the two of us working together is very much exemplative of the spirit of the collective as well. Where I know in our first year of kind of forming the group, I worked with one of our visual artists putting together some things for a conference presentation, and there's been great collaboration among everyone. In many ways, I guess that the work of the collective this year has mimicked my experience of actually being at McMurdo Station in Antarctica, where whether I was out in the ice with this seismic team that was collecting data on the movement of the Ross Ice Shelf, or whether it was back at McMurdo Station itself, where whether you're a grantee from the National Science Foundation Artists and Writers Program, or whether you're a mechanic or a cook, or a scientist or a dishwasher. There's a vital artistic community there at the station. I was down there for this very, very specific project to sonify this data from the Ross Ice Shelf to change the numerical data sets into music, but on the third day that I was there on the ice, one of the most celebrated of Antarctic scientists in the last few years had a tragic accident out on the ice and passed away. And so our dear friend and sort of coordinator down on the ice, Elaine Hood, walked up to me and said, "Hey Glenn, do you know any Scottish music?" And she said, "Yeah, because Gordon Hamilton, he was a great lover of Scottish culture, and we have to create a memorial service." And so on my third day there, I was we found a violin in the closet that had a whole bunch of musical instruments that you could share, and I found someone who could play guitar, and we played a whole bunch of Scottish dance tunes for a memorial service, and it was so exemplative of the ways in which the arts have not only been part of the Antarctic experience, but are so vital to people that live on the live very close to danger. That when we're out there doing this hard work, whether you're an artist, a musician, or a scientist, it's a shared danger, and the chances for us to celebrate together around art and music and good food are so important in that kind of place.
I'm passing a tray of cheese curds to you right now, French onion soup. Yeah, I think that's beauty, and I think it's so important with the arts, because I think the arts have always told the truth of what's happening in the world historically, because it's got the vibe of people in there. Like we're living in the world of, the attacks of fake news and all of that stuff going on. And at the same time, the arts tell what people are going through. You can tell by music what people are going through, and what you both do, and the other artists too, not only document that and are celebrating, just like you said with that concert, like that memorial tribute. You're documenting science, you're documenting nature and in the environment, which it's you go back to Charles Darwin days, and how they were doing all the. I know, Michelle, we talked about this before, and I geek out on this. These scientific illustrations of animals and landscapes, and and that's why I so love your art. It's just it's like we appreciate the small things, and like I love going on the website of this collective. I mean, everyone, again, check this out. You've got to go to aawcollective.com. You have an artist there that's showing all these things under the ice, and it's like we forget all these little things that nature are about. And so when it comes to protecting Mother Nature and we look at climate change, if we don't have that connection, and that's what I think the arts are. The arts are that connection. We're not going to protect her.
Right. The National Science Foundation has so much clout in deciding directions of scientific inquiry, at least, by those who apply from the United States. And in these days where science and scientific knowledge, authority, inquiry are being undercut so readily, medical science even now, in these days, it's even more important, I think, to have ways in which science can reach a greater audience. And part of the directive for people who get support from the National Science Foundation is to do outreach, to demonstrate the greater impact that the research can hold. And the Artists and Writers Program is such an astonishingly astute way of making sure that directive is carried out. The fact that we can, through arts and writing, we can reach audiences that might not be interested in going to pick up a science magazine, even a popular publication or something, or TV shows perhaps that are about science or travel or such. The arts can reach those creative media. So I'm so honored to be a part of this organization, supported by NSF, but then also now part of the Artists and Writers Collective that is showcasing the work that we've all done on our own through our very specific projects out on the ice. But we're now coming together, and we have a great curator that we're working with who is finding ways to tie our disparate works together. She's creating these brilliant narratives that are not only finding links between the works that the 13 of us are doing, but she's also looking back over the decades where the earlier people that have been in the Artists and Writers Program were also doing work. She's reaching back to see the way things began and the way it's currently operating. And so even though it's only the 13 of us founders that are being showcased in this first exhibition, we are a growing membership organization, and past participants are coming on by the dozens. So we have over half of the overall participants, historical participants in our group right now. So as you watch the website, there will be more and more members showing up with their particular project pages on the highlights on the website. So it's very exciting. So stay tuned.
Very cool. I think it's really cool because for me, art always shows you a different way to look at something that you thought you know about. I know this subject, but then somebody will come along with a painting or a poem or a song, and they'll say something like, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's some other thing I missed, and it's a new way of looking at something. And I think that a new way of looking at things is part of actually survival. Because if you get too complacent, that's when the lion takes you down, dude. So it's a new way of looking at things, and I think it's part of our personal responsibility to be a little bit more on the frontier of seeing change and not always being, there's a change, it's bad. You can see change coming if you look at art and you listen to poetry and you listen to music. They're already telling you something's happening here. Oh boy, I'm going to go back to the 60s.
Yeah,
but yeah,
cue Sam Cooke any moment.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but it's true.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of what we're doing, and it is a forerunner of what we're about to do as a society, and it's important.
Glenn, has that been part of the conversation between the artists? And when I say artists, I mean writers, and because I mean it as a collective. Of that is that part of the conversation of the role? There's the art side, and sometimes artists just hey, this is what I'm feeling. I got to get this out on a canvas or whatever it's going to be. But do you feel like there's also a role of this being an important way of keeping climate change in the forefront?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of rumors out there that artists are folks that spend all their time kind of living inside of their heads and sort of pulling down the shades and closing the doors and creating artwork and then somehow it's brilliant and someone discovers that it's brilliant but that's so far from the truth of what so many working artists are doing, like those in our collective, where the arts are fundamentally a conversation. Okay, between the subject, the artist, and the audience, and the collective here, I think, gives us a wonderful opportunity to leverage all of these conversations around climate change. But I think that even before we get to the climate change issue, our year of COVID. As well as some of the other struggles in our country over the last couple of years, I think for many of us has developed or has created a greater sense of isolation, where we're alone more. Okay, we're not bumping into folks that spontaneously give us a new idea and make us think of something. Okay, we're more and more holed up into our smaller groups of people, and especially with a vaccine on the horizon. I think we're all ready to open up the shades and open up the front door and walk out again. And
sure.
And I think one of the things that the collective does is that it opens up that window to a place that everyone on the planet shares. And it's a place that tells us so much about the rest of our planet, where it's time to be part of this collective mindset, a mindset that's not only ready to solve problems but also to do it in a joyful way, in a beautiful way. And so with that, whereas our collective sort of starts with the notion of the collective artists, there's also some marvelous ways in which folks can become part of the broader collective with help and support this new online exhibition. And so when you're visiting the site there's a donate button. So
donate.
Right corner.
Part of it. Well, this is what this whole thing is the collective too. Is when artists and musicians come together, because sometimes you are, doing solitary creative work, and then you get together and it's like, oh, somebody's like tweaking my little noodle part of my brain over here, and I'm going to now create some that just like you get this other inspiration for more creativity. The more you surround yourself with creativity, the more creative you become. And that goes for business people, because that's, we need more money so that we can, sponsor things like this. So you got to get creative. So I'm just going to say that it's true. The donate button, go check it out. And everyone, it's on the website. Go to aawcollective.com. But I think it's that collaborative thing between artists and musicians and writers, especially over the shared experience, is so important to keep that conversation moving forward, that creativity. But also, like we were saying, you're documenting, you're doing all these amazing things together. But yeah, as we move forward, you're putting science in front. And I think this is so cool about the arts have been brutalized over the last 10 years, I feel. Like even art in schools have been just like slash this, slash that funding. And that's, so when we talk about money and donating and all of that, you think about like what National Parks Arts Foundation has done, what this whole thing that you guys are together on, with what the National Science Foundation's Antarctic Artists and Writers program. These kind of programs are so essential, and if we don't have them, I don't want to say any dirty words, but I'm close. The reality is we need them. And that is how we're going to be able to take this knowledge in. You guys are like Mary Poppins, here, we're making it nice and cozy for you to get this information in and feel something. You know what I mean? It's important. Yeah.
Well, it is. If you take away our art and our ability to art, then you're basically taking away our ability to express ourselves away. And that makes us not a free society anymore. So the arts are an essential part of our freedom. And people need to remember that, because it's essential that we don't let people just stomp on our rights.
Yeah, and actually I'd like to build on what you just said there, because certainly the explosion of social media has offered this opportunity for any person who has an internet connection to speak, to say something publicly, okay, and we often talk about our First Amendment right, okay, here in the U.S., the freedom of speech. But one of the interesting things about the freedom of speech is that whereas we have a right to say things, there is no legal right for us to be heard or listened to. And artists and scientists fundamentally are professional listeners, because they look at something deeply, carefully, and listen to what that thing has to say, and then turn it around and then invite other people into that world. And I think that this is one of the other really important places that we as artists, especially civic artists that are interested in the health of the planet, that this is a time for us to step forward, to not only share our art, okay, but also to be an example of good, careful, gentle, empathetic, and profound listeners.
Oh, and so you're an interpreter. By being a listener, you're an interpreter and a steward.
And still a historian. You're a historian.
We're giving you a whole bunch of labels here. No, I dig it. You're so right, Wes. You're so right.
The people in our collective are embodying all of those things. The way we have interpreters and historians. There are so many of those aspects that are being featured in the works that these members of the collective are doing. You're spot on with that.
I want to bring this up too. We always feel this urgency, and there's all these things that we discover new species. As other species are becoming endangered, and it's that is part of climate change, and it's also because people are going on these expeditions. And it is dangerous, like you brought up, and it is dangerous what people do to go to the lengths to film a lizard that is in some weird tree area that's maybe a snake is right behind you or whatever, Everybody's got something in these expeditions. It is an expedition. And I love that word. Isn't that one of the best words on the planet? Going on an expedition,
Yeah, I love it.
Danger is always involved, and it's too is as you're documenting, interpreting, and doing like what Nancy and I do with our Love Your Parks tour. We're starting to see the need of and documenting before it goes away, because things are changing rapidly. And so I think part of this importance of what you're doing is documenting it, just like I said, before it goes away. Do you feel that, Glenn, when you're like recording and listening? Do you feel like those sounds are going to shift and change the next time you go to the Antarctica? I mean, because you will go again. You never know. I'm just saying.
well, I'm honored to have been someone who went once, and I would certainly not turn down an opportunity to return if it comes around. But I think what you're saying is very, very important. Is that we as artists, we wear many hats. Okay, we mentioned earlier, the hats of a public communicator or a historian, or someone who in what you're suggesting is actually a preservationist, okay, an archivist of sounds and sites and things from the natural world, but also I think that as we look at our heritage here, we can't ignore the fact that it was John Muir, a photographer, whose photographs of what later became Yosemite Park,
right.
and other great Western mountain images. Those photographs were the things that convinced the elected leaders in Washington, to begin the first national parks.
Absolutely. And the paintings of Thomas Moran, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that what we're trying to do with the Antarctic Artists and Writers Collective is to put that civic voice in the forefront of what we do as artists, to tell these stories of faraway places. So whether you're an elected decision maker in your country or your state, or whether you're simply making decisions about what products you buy or how you live your life, these are decisions that need to be informed by artists, and so that's what we're trying to do.
Do we even know who owns the Antarctica?
Nobody owns Antarctica. That's the beauty of it. There were early, if you can imagine it divided into slices of pie, like wedges, there are different divisions that are considered territorial claims by the different countries that initially signed on the Antarctic Treaty in the 1950s. And then in the 60s, the different stations began being built. But still, no one actually owns any of it. It's an apolitical sort of space.
Wow.
If you can believe that on our planet today.
Yeah,
Well,
really.
there's something to talk about. I'm like, can't we just do that now with everywhere? Like, personally, I'm just saying, if we could just get into that kind of mode, it might be easier. I don't know. I mean,
I didn't.
Yeah.
When exhibit that I put together. Oh, sorry.
No. Finish your thought there, Michelle. Yeah.
In an exhibit that I put together about a year ago, I was drawing comparisons between the archipelago that we know of as Hawaii, kingdom, state, whatever you want to call it, and Antarctica, because as I spent more time figuring it out and being in these two places, I found more and more similarities. And one similarity that struck me was the way that Antarctica is divided into those pie wedges, and the islands in the Hawaiian archipelago during Hawaiian kingdom times were divided into similar wedges called ahupua'a. And each one of those wedges was occupied by groups of people that had reign over land that included the mountains, the upper elevations, all the way down and through valleys to the shoreline. And so that meant that people in each of those areas had resources from all of those different habitats. And it was sustainable in a very interesting way that is, it's so different from the way we look at land division nowadays. But I loved being able to draw that among many other connections between these two places.
And I have to go on the animal nature side that doesn't care about the boundaries at all. Like historically, my DNA says I'm migrating from here to there, and I don't like your border crossings and your boundaries.
That's right.
Just saying.
That's right. Oh, I've always said that about human beings. We moved
Yeah.
around the planet because the planet changed. I mean, around the world, and because Glenn can get into the planetary stuff because, like, he's done all that with music. He gets out there in space. But here's the deal with this. You know, the Earth shifted and people changed and history changed, and we were nomadic in spirit because we had to be for survival. So I believe, like, our roots, our DNA, like, remembers that. Yeah, like, I know, like, I need to go south now this summer. I need to go back to the equator because my body knows it. But there's this thing you do, and so it's I feel like wherever we go, we collect this. I call it deja vu dust. And I wonder if you guys feel that when you do all these residencies, and like you've done Hawaii, which is very interesting because this is so fascinating. It's fascinating that you did a whole exhibit on these, just that whole, like, here I'm tropical and here I am over there playing with penguins and in the snow. We're back to the bipolar opposites, and it's interesting to me because you kind of, don't you think about the other places? Like, don't you feel like you're still wearing the jacket that you wore, or maybe not in Hawaii, but you still have a piece of it on you. That's the deja vu dust. So you carry it everywhere you go. So you start to look at things in a different way, especially when you spend time. And especially the two of you, and I know the other artists in your collective and other artists in residence, that you start to look at things in a really microscopic way, just like the listening, like Glenn was talking about. There's this microscopic way, yet at the same time, the microscopic way means that you're also having to fly out to zoom in and look grand, look bigger. Did I make any sense at all? It is a holiday season.
Yes, absolutely. I think the way that it right. I think the way that our beings have been changed because of that experience is what drives us to continue to make work, to share the experiences through our respective creative outlets. It's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to document it in a way that can be shared and enjoyed beyond our capacity to be there to narrate it.
So yeah,
Glenn, what was on your mind before?
Yeah, we need to go back there.
This notion of a mindset of survivalism, of needing each other. That when I was with my team on the Ross Ice Shelf at a little place called Yesterday Camp, which is out on an ice shelf, a kilometer thick and the size of the state of Texas, where everything is flat, and we have a couple tents in which we live in, and we're trained how to do that intensive survival work, both individually and collectively. One of the things about being out there, which has stayed with me ever since, is that when we would all go out on an expedition, away from the camp together, one person was designated as a person who would every 30 minutes ask everyone else in the team a couple of important questions. When was the last time you ate? When was the last time you drank water? Are your fingers and toes cold? Okay. And even though I live in northern New York, near Lake Placid, in the land of the Winter Olympics, I don't expect a stranger to walk up to me and ask me those questions every 30 minutes, and I would feel a little bit put off if they did. But what I realized down there was that those questions were keeping me alive. And when it was my turn to go around and ask those questions to other people, it was keeping them alive. And there was this profound sense of connection that is born of a common challenge, a common danger, and a common vision for what we're doing. And I think that finds its way into our conversations with the leadership team of the collective, where they're there really is an opportunity for us as artists to continue our individual work, but also to look towards others in profound ways, to not only survive but to thrive and to tell this important story about the bottom of the planet.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You're so right about that. It's our time in Africa was like that, and it's we always talk about this greater sense of community. And coming back to this country, we've had almost a culture shock of not having that community of survival. Other than our friends that also went to Africa at the time, that especially Nancy as taking me as a baby to Africa and to the wilds of Kenya, and when she worked with Joy Adamson and living out in the bush, there was nothing. There's no one to talk to about that. And we have some friends, and we're going to actually, something new's coming on the horizon on that. But it is exactly what you said, Glenn. I've had a hard time figuring it out. What is this sense of community? And it is a community over knowing there's a strong danger. And yeah, that's beautiful, though. It's beautiful because it's community.
I'm glad you brought that up, Glenn. Yes. I think this is a point that I missed in my previous exhibition, because I could have brought in the word kuleana. It's a Hawaiian word. It's a value. It's a practice about responsibility, not just to yourself, but also to the world and to your community, and ways of being a reciprocal agent within relationships. I think it's so beautiful. I can see it being emphasized in my son's educational experience here in Hawaii, but it's also very, very active in Antarctica. And Nancy and Lisa, you're mentioning its presence in Africa. I really love how transcendent that mindset can be. So I'm glad that we're bringing it up today. Thank you.
Oh, this is what a collective is all about. It's about people getting together. It makes it bigger than can't do it. Yeah, it makes the experience grow.
I want to be talking about the community of nature, the animals and the plants. Okay, so when I was out in the wild, and there wasn't really a lot of people to talk to, now you're talking to the plants and the animals, and I found great peace in that, to be honest, because they don't talk back. Well, the animals could, but it is amazing to me that you can walk into the wild and not get killed by a lion, but you could just sit down, and they just could sit down next to you if they wanted to or not. And it's all about how you present yourself and how you feel about it, and it's a whole different connection on a different level. And I went there as an artist, but it came back as more of a nature person artist. It's like, and I don't paint anymore now. I write, but I found it to be a real, like, the education. If you can open yourself up to it, and that's a big deal, opening yourself up to learning and making do with what you've got was a huge experience. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, the days in Africa, some of them were really difficult, but for the most part, man, I could just sit, like even now, I can go sit outside and talk to a hummingbird, and I'm happy about that.
Not right now in Madison. There's flamingos,
no. Well, no, I want real ones, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's to the disconnect that we've decided we could or should have from the natural world is what's going to take us out in the end. So I'm a great proponent of getting back to nature and reconnecting. So when we go into the future, we make the right decisions of what we're doing to our planet.
Yeah.
And one of the first news stories I heard when I turned on the radio this morning was on NPR, and it was about Antarctic ice. I was thrilled to hear them make a comparison between the current temperature in Minneapolis, 16 degrees, was actually colder than the current temperature at McMurdo Station. And then they went on to, I like how they did that relationship first so people can relate to the place. And then they went to Antarctica and they talked about ice core sampling being a sort of book of knowledge that is in the ice. There's information about past climate history locked in the ice but we are running out of time to be able to access this, because it's not only a matter of glacial ice melting from the surface, but it's also a matter of the Earth having the ground rock, the continent underneath is warm enough that it's melting the oldest layers from the bottom up. And that was a perspective that was a little different for me. And, you know, even though I went to the ice and was scuba diving and was looking at marine environments, one of the projects that I came away inspired to do was about glacial ice. And it was all because, you know, you're in this network of community where you're meeting all these people that are doing other things, and there's so many ideas that swirl. So just focusing on a single project if you have your blinders on, you may miss other things that are going on that can also be ways of telling stories of this important place. So I'm thankful for that sense of community.
This is our water source, actually.
Yeah.
It's our water
source.
source. People tend to forget that. This is our water source.
Well, but I love that you bring up this about the layers, and being here in Madison, Wisconsin right now and going through the snow. It's going to snow we're in like 24 hours, we're going to get it again. And we've gone through this experience of like going, this stuff never melts. And then all of a sudden it melted, and like all of a sudden it was like in 24 hours I'm melting, and it was like a week later. And there's ice sliding off the roof. I know we talked about this before we started recording, but like talk about explosions. And I was thinking to myself about this, like with glaciers, like what that sound was like as glaciers like melted and fell into the ocean. And going and shoveling the snow, like I really do really, really appreciate the experience here, because I'm learning so much in regard, and I'm just fascinated by snow. And here's this tiny little bit. The whole snow thing, and then when I'm shoveling snow, I know this is in suburbia, but it's interesting that it's the layer thing that happens with snow. Like you can tell this was the snow that was 2 days ago, and then this is the new snow, and you know what I mean? Like I can't explain it. You gotta just you gotta shovel snow, and you can realize as you're scooping it up, like this. I don't know. It's like scooping. We're back to cake and pie, but I find it fascinating. I'm like totally into this whole thing of how it works, how it melts, how it doesn't, and it's not doing normal stuff apparently right now if it's sliding off roofs now. It's supposed to do it in April, but this is very fascinating, and that's my closest I can get to Antarctica. But I feel like at least we're here in Madison, Wisconsin, so we understand even more with you guys, with what you experience. Because I'm cold. You guys, you should have told me to wear better mittens. I'm just saying, I should have talked to you guys both before we got here. Go ahead, Glenn.
What you say is so important because in learning that there's different kinds of snow, okay, you know that is showing curiosity and wonder at things that are not part of an experience that you had before. And in many ways, that's what we try to do as artists. I know when I spent some time at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, that learning that there was more than one kind of lava. Okay, it was really exciting for me as a corn-fed country kid from upstate New York who never encountered even one kind of lava. And so I think that there's many functions that we as artists serve, but if no other functions happen, and at the very least we nurture a sense of curiosity amongst our audiences, then I think we will have accomplished something.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. Absolutely.
You guys, this is so exciting. Please keep us posted as this collective progresses with exhibits and everything online, because I know eventually when COVID, kind of goes away, thanks to science, got to do that. Then, yes. There'll be more in-person things too, in-person exhibits. I love the fact, though, that the internet does provide this connection that's universal. To all the places that do have internet anyway, it can reach out. And I love the fact that this all comes from some kind of residency. And when you talked about lava, I think this And I want to bring up also, talking about Hawaii, I wanted to touch on, Michelle, you've got some art out there in California I want to talk about real quick. But you talked about lava, the different types of lava. And we just featured a story about Amboy Crater, which is out in Joshua Tree area. And Michelle, you know what I'm talking about. You know where we are with Joshua Tree in that area. And we were writing about, like, you know, there's this trail that became a national it's a national natural landmark, but it became a national recreation trail going where you could go up to the top of the crater and look down. And when we got there, it was just too hot to do the whole thing. And they say, don't do it. You know, it was really, really hot. And this is where all the parks were shutting down. But this was one place we could go. And there was wildflowers. It was beautiful. It was so surreal to see wildflowers too. But we just got there so late in that pinnacle time that if you go there, you're going to pass out or something, you know. And I was thinking about you guys in Hawaii, like what that has got to be like when you did the Artist-Residency, being able to see the big, you know, calderas and the craters and everything. And then it's talking about this cinder cone lava thingy. And I'm like, what do you mean about a cinder cone? What is this? A pine tree got in there somewhere? What? Like, now I'm like curious because I didn't know what they were talking about. Like, honestly, it's in our magazine that it's a cinder cone because that's what the park people say, but I don't know what that means. Like, I didn't know there were different types of lava. You know what I mean? So it's like that's I think what's great about these residencies and the things that you have both experienced and the other artists is you have that time to breathe and learn and delve into the different types of snow. Yes, there's yellow snow here too. Different types of lava, and because you don't really think that, you know what I mean. And if I'd been able to spend more time in that crater area of the Amboy Crater, I would understand more about what that lava was about. But we just didn't have the time. But that's fascinating to me that there's more than one lava. That's So here
I love
it is.
that some of the geological terms for these Hawaiian lava forms are, you know, geologists use the Hawaiian word. It's not just something that is mentioned as one of the common names or terms that can be used. So the smooth lava that looks like almost like ripples of pancake batter being cooked, those concentric ripples, that's pahoehoe, and it's easy to walk on with bare feet. It's smooth and quite comfortable. And then the sharper lava that looks jagged, like rough shards of glass or broken edges. Indeed, if you try to walk on that with your bare feet, you will be saying, it's too painful.
Wow. You know, that's fashionable. Then I want to know what a cinder cone thing is now. The cinder cone pine thing, whatever. Cinder cone, I got to learn. I'm going to look into that. But do you know? Go for it. Tell me.
The cone is just the shape of the volcanic structure. The stereotypical shape of a volcano will have that. It's a cone shape if you think of it like a geometric form. So it's not the pine cone. It's not the seed-bearing botanical cone.
I know.
And then cinder is the crumbly rock that you might even find in a bag at a garden supply store that you can put on your landscaping. So think of cinder like that. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy now. Like, because it does look like cookies. Yeah, like Oreos all crushed up, and like you do want to eat it, but then you know better. There we go. Thank you for that. Thank you. So right now you've got a piece of art on display called "Get the Message: Words and Images." It's at Benicia. Oh my gosh, up in Northern California, Benicia. Is that like Point Reyes area? And you said it was inspired by a visit in the silver sword plants in Hawaii National Park. They're kind of like yuccas in a way, those silver sword plants.
They do have that growth form, yes. It looks like a giant pincushion with all of those spikes emanating from the center. But if you are amid these plants at the right time of their life cycle, you might see a flower spike emerge from that dense pin cone bottom space. And then there are all these, they look like small daisies. They're in the aster family. They look like small sunflower heads on a central spire. And so it's quite a dramatic plant. You know, I first learned about these plants when I was in college in Wisconsin because one of my botany professors there studied silver swords and their genetic radiation in Hawaii. So even back then, before I ever visited the state of Hawaii, I was interested in the plants that are endemic to the state. So it was a real thrill to be able to experience these plants in the national park, an area that is protecting these endangered species. And then I used my field notebook paper, that waterproof paper that biologists might use, and I used when I was a science student. I used it as a surface for metal point drawing, and thinking of the name silver on the plant, this hairy silver hairs reflecting the light and saving water. And I did silver point drawing on those pieces of paper and then assembled it to be a sculpture, a paper sculpture that looks like that plant. And I was excited that this sculpture got into this exhibition that is not just talking about visual art, but then it also asks the artist to tell what was the inspiration, the literary reference that inspired the work. And I was able to draw from a time when I was at the park with my family. My son was a few years younger, in elementary school, but during sunrise, there's often a park docent or a ranger that will chant a Native Hawaiian song that is about sun, asking the sun to rise and having the sun come up above the horizon. And to be experiencing the sunrise up atop Haleakala is quite dramatic. So my son ended up singing along with this ranger, and someone else, another docent at the park, saw him doing this. Later they spoke, and she said that she had tears in her eyes. She was so moved by that experience of seeing a younger child knowing this song wrote and not even being Hawaiian. She said that when she was young, she was of a generation where Hawaiian was discouraged from being spoken, and kids were reprimanded for speaking their native language. And to see that there's a shift that's come about over these last decades was very moving to this person. So I wrote that chant as the literary inspiration for that sculpture.
I love that. I love that. And see, then again, that's that community. It's that community spirit. And I'm into the plant because they are like maybe I should say like more like aloe, but like they remind me of yuccas. Like, and there's a certain light that comes in, but there's something about Hawaii where it kind of reminds me of Tsitsikamma area up on the garden route of South Africa has that, where there's these bush and then like hummingbirds come in, but they're not sugarbirds, right? Sugarbirds. But anyway, I'm getting way off topic, but you guys just make my head all nature-fied, and we needed the nature fix. So thank you both for joining us. It's so cool. Before you go, each of you, what was like your first thought in mind when you arrived in Antarctica? Let's start with you, Glenn, getting there. Just when you arrived, I mean, did you pinch yourself?
Actually, I think that my first thought on arrival was making sure that I had all the gear that Elaine Hood told me I was supposed to bring with me, and I was focused very much on the logistical. Once we got settled in, the wonder started to seep in, slowly but surely, and it went from kind of making sure I had all of my survival gear as the thing that was that was glowing in my forehead to having a chance to listen to the whole planet to bump into then Secretary of State and whole bunches of other stuff that essentially brought me into a bigger world. I arrived there with a bunch of individual worries that was a pretty small world defined by the place between my ears, and then I left being part of a much bigger world.
Oh, and look, and it's continuing on. That's what I so love about this collective, is that you use the word transcend. That transcend is one of my favorite words on the planet, because it just is like we keep evolving and growing and moving, and community and the collectives do that. It keeps things living and moving forward. So I think it's really exciting, and it comes from collaboration and artists working together and science working together. And I love that science is part of this forefront of it all. So it's really wonderful. But Michelle, did you pinch yourself? I mean, you went down in the water.
Oh, I did.
Times.
When you posed the question, I wrote down the first thing that came to mind, and that was the word brilliant. There's something about being on the plane and looking out those few porthole windows to be able to see what you see out the window. And it was so bright. It was so bright and crisp and clear. And it was hard to tell just what altitude we were at as we were looking at the landscape flying into the station. And then once I landed and exited the plane, the light again is so brilliant and crisp. The air is so clear, and it also is so clean. You know, it's such a pure air quality. And then once I was in the water, the water quality, the water clarity is also exceedingly clear, more visibility than I've had in any other diving experience around the world of it all. Those are the things that impressed upon me immediately.
That's
and I'm glad
amazing.
that we can bring back those experiences to share.
That's amazing, because I think that's important. Nancy's got a collection of photographs. We have a storage unit, a small storage unit, and it's really there to house her last few paintings that we own. Some of my writing and some of our artifacts of Africa, but also her slide collection. She's got over 18,000 slides, where Mount Kilimanjaro was actually Mount Kilimanjaro with the snow. You could have all the biodiversity of the animals, and we're still kind of figuring out what we're going to do with them all. It's not what it is now. Like we see what Kenya looks like at a watering hole, and it's not what you could get like 30 species at a watering hole, 20 to 30 species in one photo, and you don't have that now. And I know that there's something we have to do with it, but even now as we're traveling, when you brought up air quality, I see it as I'm photographing, and I see telephone lines, and I'm always dodging this human and it's like it's everywhere, and I don't know what to do, and I feel like we have to document everything. I don't know. I just feel like a greedy pig of documenting, and I don't know, but I feel like it's slipping. I'm not being like urgent crazy, but I do see pollution when we're out in all these parks, and we're in community parks all the way to national parks. I do see the pollution. I do see the phone lines. I do see the cell phone towers. And you want to take this beautiful photo, and they're in the way. And I always try to crop it out and do all that nice art stuff. But then I feel like I should also take a photo and say, do we want this? So there's this thing going on. And eventually I wonder, are we going to be a bunch of cell phone trees? Are we going to have a forest of towers? That's where I feel we're going if we don't really look at it. And I feel like when you're out doing this, that we see those things. We see those little things that we just kind of take for granted every day, that's just normal. So I don't know. I don't know where we are on all of that in the world, but I think art is definitely in the way, and we really appreciate what you've both done, and all the artists that are part of the collective, and all the artists that go and take that time to do a residency, because it's a very unique experience. And I want to give a big shout out to the National Parks Arts Foundation for connecting us with you. So keep up with them at nationalparksartsfoundation.org, and also keep up with Michelle and with Glenn. You got to keep up with Michelle at Schwengala.com. That's SCHWENGALA, Schwengala.com. Keep up with Glenn on his website, Art for Brains. Can't beat that domain name. I love that, artforbrains.com. And also the collective, which is aawcollective.com. We want to thank you both for joining us. And Glenn, we're going to play Tremble. You want to give everyone a little overview of Tremble?
This is one of the pieces that the notes in the piece came from a mathematical translation of seismic information from the Ross Ice Shelf, and so the notion that the Ross Ice Shelf trembles when the water pressure underneath it changes means that the ice moves when there is weather anywhere on the planet, and so Antarctica is the Ross Ice Shelf is like a big eardrum for the rest of the planet, listening to what's happening. And we were there when we were standing on top of the Ross Ice Shelf. Even though we couldn't feel it with our feet, we could feel it through the data that trembling went through our feet and into our hearts. So that's the inspiration for the choral piece here, Tremble.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Very
joining us,
cool.
both of you. Happy New Year, and keep us posted.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Lisa and Nancy. And as we say in Hawaii,
thank you, everybody.
Now is Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, that's Happy Birthday. I said the wrong one.
Happy New Year, everybody.
No, here it is. Happy cheese curds. Here it is, everyone. Tremble.